Hi, welcome to the Impact Lounge. This is a weekly show brought to you by 6 Degrees. I am Stacy Houston, and today I am joined by two incredible humans that are doing amazing work with young people in conservation and the outdoors. So first we have Jonathan Johnson, who's a community manager with the Student Conservation Association in Atlanta. And we're also joined by Valeria de Jesus Casas, and she's a Houston community manager at SCA. So we'll do SCA for short. Welcome, both of you guys.
Hey.
Hello. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Yeah, I mean, it's Earth Month, so what better way to kind of talk about this type of work and bring you guys on to be the experts here. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right in, right? Most people, I think, have heard of maybe SCA or Student Conservation Association, but for our viewers that don't really know the specifics of your work, I'd love for each of you guys to share a little about what you guys do and the origins of the organization.
Okay, so I'll start. SCA is Americans Conservation Corps. Our members protect and restore national parks, marine sanctuaries, cultural landmarks, and community green spaces in all 50 states. Our mission is to build the next generation of conservation leaders and inspire lifelong stewardship of the environment and communities by engaging young people in hands-on service to the land. So that's like the overarching mission statement.
That's a perfect.
And I can go ahead and talk a little bit about the programs that Jonathan and I run. But mainly, one thing that's really good to know about SC is that we have an array of different programming, from traditional course style programs to internships to residential course. But I feel like the heart of the organization right now is in our community program, which is basically working in cities and providing experiential opportunities for urban youth. So Jonathan and I have the privilege to run programs both in Houston and Atlanta, but we also have many other cities like Chicago, Oakland, Seattle, DC, and Pittsburgh and New Jersey that we run program in. So we have a presence in several different communities across the nation, and these programs are super special because we're really thinking about what it means to center city stewardship in the conservation movement.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to get into like the meat, because that's really where this conversation I think is going to get really interesting. But in order to kind of have a little bit more background about the two of you, Valeria, first I'll ask you. Now, you have an interesting background because you started as a student that was kind of served by SCA, and now you work for them. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about like your journey and what got you so hooked in this world.
Definitely. I love talking to people about my history with the organization because my personal experiences with SCA, along with my cultural identity, have deeply shaped the way I run my program. So I actually started off with the Student Conservation Association as a sophomore in high school. I was recruited by a super smiling face in a blue shirt in like a college counselor's lounge. And they were like, "Do you like camping?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And next thing I know, I found myself in a weekend volunteer program in the school year. And I met youth from all over the city. I got to like meet different people. And I was a part of different small conservation projects on the weekends. We did environmental education. So that experience with SCA really did serve to me as an introduction to conservation. My family are lovers, learners, and healers of the land, so I already had an affinity to nature, but SCA really taught me that you can conserve and save the planet in your community, and it starts with your community. So through that experience, I definitely started serving in other programs. So I've been a crew member in the community program. We have also a very national program as well, where we take students from all over the country and place them in groups, and they serve in a national park or a forest. And I got the privilege to fly for the first time ever when I was like in 11th grade. And I served in a backpacking crew at Golden Gate National Recreation Area. So that was like a magical experience because I was in a different state. I didn't have to pay for that experience. And visit like awesome national parks that, I realized not everyone has access to at a very young age. So being in that space was really empowering, and it did something weird for me. I came back very different, and I started to look at my home in a very different way, as a place that, you know, needed protecting, especially with like knowing the history of Houston, and we're really susceptible to flooding, and we're impacted by natural disasters like every year. And coming back from that experience is really empowering. Like, wow, like I love going to a national park and having that experience, but like conservation really does begin in your backyard. So it definitely shifted my perspective of environmentalism. And through there, I've been a conservation crew leader, a project leader. I now have the privilege to run the program that introduced me to conservation.
That's fantastic. And what an incredible experience too. I mean, I know that, yeah, exactly right. I know a lot of people, like, that's like bucket list to get to experience these national parks and like the beauty that's like right here in the United States. So I'm sure that was incredibly inspiring and just a total blessing to get to go and do that free of cost. Like, fantastic. Thanks for sharing a little bit more about your background there. And Jonathan, now you have a interesting background too. You've worked with youth for a long time, but in a different way. And this is really kind of your first go into the conservation world. So I'd love for you to talk about a little bit about your background and working with youth and the type of programming that you're familiar with, and then what you've kind of learned in this like initial experience working in the conservation world with students.
Yeah. So coming out to Valeria, I mean, she gave an amazing story of her journey. But I think my journey was very different, just because I started off in theater. That was my background. I got my degrees in it. I was going to be an actor and be famous and be up in these streets performing. And I got a great opportunity to work for a nonprofit in Savannah, Georgia. And they worked with kids, at-risk youth who were in the juvenile court system. And they were giving kids the opportunity, before you would go to juvenile, you could go to this organization and do theater. You can learn hip hop and you can learn writing. And so me coming, I'm like, I'm an actor, I don't do this. And I was working and I fell in love with these amazing kids, because it made me realize that we are more alike than different. And that I learned so much from these amazing youth. It wasn't because they were bad kids. We think of a kid being bad, but it was more that they just didn't have opportunities and exposure. And I was able to give these babies, I always call them my precious lambs, an opportunity to learn something that they had never been introduced to. And so that kind of started my journey of working with youth. I went from, not wanting to be an actor and be out here in these streets, but really going into spaces to work with young people. And it got me here in Atlanta, and I worked with an amazing nonprofit and in the inner city, in a small community called Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh is in Southwest Atlanta.
Oh, with Pittsburgh. I was like, oh, I was born in Pittsburgh. Different Pittsburgh.
I know. It's different Pittsburgh. It's in Southwest Atlanta. It's a small little inner city community with a lot of love, but not with a lot of resources. And so coming there, the community enveloped me with love. I fell in love with these amazing students, and I was able to give them exposure to theater. I was able to give them exposure to just different things outside of their little four walls that they were used to. Some of them, I took them to their first performance. Some of them, I took them to their first time outside of Pittsburgh to like Northwest Atlanta. And so it made me realize something about seeing a problem and being able to find a solution. And I think that not that I was the solution, but being able to help them discover their solutions. And so being connected here to SCA and knowing, how it was started with Liz Putnam, who was a phenomenal woman who started this organization, but how she saw a problem and she created a solution with SCA. And that's kind of how I felt like a part of this world. Like, even though I'm new to this green space and conservation work, but I'm always about seeing what the need is and seeing how can I be at service to my community and to people of color, and how can I help build that solution. And so I'm really excited to be a part of the community program, because I know I'm going to be a part of helping kids be exposed to this great outdoors and just to their world that they already know about, but they just kind of need the tools to even be greater.
See, that's beautiful. And I too I spent a lot of time working with youth, and what I think I'm hearing is like exposure and experiences. Like it's not about, always having to do big, huge, grand things, but using what you have to expose these young people to things that, I mean, like you said, as much as going North Atlanta, some people these kids haven't even had a chance sometimes to be outside of their local community. And how easy is that for us to kind of put together when we really put our minds to a solution. So that's fantastic. And I think a good segue. So over this past year, I think most people and organizations have been super hyper focused on structural racism and trying to look at different ways that they can change systems, right? So I really want to talk about race and equity in terms of climate action, and just get your guys' thoughts on what you're seeing and experiencing, especially working with BIPOC youth. And whoever wants to take that first. I know that's a big one, but.
I'll dive in, and I know Valeria will come in.
Sounds good.
One of my favorite activists, and I want to make sure I'm saying her name right, but it's Elizabeth, I think, Yearpeer. And if I'm not, please don't beat me up. But I love when she was saying, as she was fighting for George Floyd and out in the streets and protesting, she said that if I can't breathe, then we can't fight for injustice. And so what she basically was saying that it's a bigger picture. Like, yeah, we are fighting for social justice and for racial justice and, equality, but also climate justice is a big part of why a lot of BIPOC youth are experiencing a lot of these different issues and things that they're going on in their communities. And so it made me starting to think that even when coming to SCA, I was like, I was a big activist about Black Lives Matter. I was a big part of seeing what was going on in our world and being a part of those conversations. But the biggest part is I realized working in my last organization is that we lived in inner city Atlanta, and around there's a concrete jungle. It's a food desert, not close to any grocery stores. It's close to factories. You know what I'm saying? It's close to train stations. So, these young people are inhaling a lot of toxins. And so that is an injustice by itself of saying that this community that has been around for years has been a part of this, injustice of exposing young people and young kids to these toxins that is in their air. A lot of them had asthma and breathing issues. And I definitely think it correlates to their living conditions. And then also just the heat of having so much concrete around you and cars, and just how it is so intensified in heat. It shows a lot of the injustices that they experience already in their community. So yeah, we're fighting for equality, for social justice issues, but it also is a climate justice issue as well. And you have to do both. You have to be a part of both of those fights.
Well, I mean, you make an interesting point, and you see these in communities all around the country, but you don't see bus barns, right, in Georgetown, right, or Beverly Hills, right? Yeah. They put them in places with communities that lack resources to fight back, or even when they do fight back, a lot of times they're just bulldozed and not listened to. So, yeah, no, that's a great point. I don't know, Valeria, if you wanted to add to that.
Definitely. It's definitely a heavy topic, and we can go so many different directions. But I want to environmental justice is social justice, and that aligns with climate action. And unfortunately, climate change is disproportionately affecting communities of color at a higher rate. And not only do sacrificed communities deal with that on a daily basis, they've been dealing with that for decades now. You also have communities of color fighting to just stay alive and navigating not only the climate crisis, but all these other social justice issues. Think about the impacts that does to a child who hasn't even seen the potential of their life, or even sees their life as worthy because of all these issues. So, which is why I think providing intentional safe spaces through programs like SCA is really valuable. But if it's done with intention, and we center the issues of the communities that we serve and the people that we try to serve as well. So it's definitely a huge issue, and it is affecting people in various different ways. But I just really want to acknowledge that our kids are not only navigating that, but other social justice issues.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are a lot of cultural norms, right? But there's also a lot of stereotypes and myths around BIPOC people in general, not to mention youth, and conservation, environmentalism, or just the great love of the outdoors. And I'd love for you guys to kind of talk through what that looks like and how it shows up in the work that you guys do.
I would
Ooh,
say,
I can.
go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I love this question because there's this narrative that people of color don't care about the outdoors, but it's really people of color in the front lines fighting for the health of communities. So I just wanted to like point that out. Jonathan, sorry, you can go.
No, we were on the same kind of wavelength.
Same wavelength.
Yeah, that we don't love being outdoors, or that we don't go outside, which is like total the opposite. Because and I'm just gonna go very community. Me growing up, I always was outdoors. My mom, them during the summer, you went outside and played all day. And you know what I'm saying? Or you went to that barbecue or that community engagement or playing baseball or just being exposed to that community rec center or just being outdoors. And that is a myth. I just think that a lot of people of color in bigger spaces, bigger green spaces, don't always feel safe in those spaces. They don't want to be interrogated. They don't want to be followed. They don't want to be judged for, being new to this space and not knowing the norms that have been set in place at this park. And I think that a lot of times they don't choose those parks to go to, but they are outdoors and they are experiencing this green earth that we live in. It looks different. It looks different.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point about safety, and how the outdoors are utilized, right, with different cultures, for sure. Valeria, I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh no, definitely just agree with everything that Jonathan said, and right now BIPOC people are definitely reclaiming their narrative and like highlighting the work that they're doing, and that's worth celebrating. Because even in our programs, there have been instances where a visibly marginalized group goes out to a park and gets racially profiled. And these are people that are like actively doing great things for their community. And it's really unfortunate that things like that happen, but it's not, and that creates silos for people to get further engaged in their community. So it's not BIPOC people, it's systems, and it's white supremacy and internalized white supremacy.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the correct framing. So thank you so much for just having that honest conversation. I really want to talk about SCA's affinity programs. And am I understanding this right? These are kind of newer, so to speak, like really specific work that you guys are doing, or maybe it's the initiatives or programs around them have kind of reshaped. I'd love for you guys to talk about that work specifically, because I think that it's really just fantastic, and to hear what you guys are doing in these local communities is really special. So if you guys each want to talk about the communities in Atlanta and Houston respectively, that would be wonderful.
I think Valeria should probably start it because
okay.
I know it's a part of her amazing thinking of how it kind of came into play. So
yeah, thank you. Our affinity programs are very special programs for so many various reasons, but we really wanted to create a space where people felt a sense of community and a sense of belonging. Not saying that our regular programs don't already do that, but when you have a specific group of people that represent each other, you can really co-create a space free of marginalization. So that was really the intention behind our affinity programs, is to acknowledge that our identities really play a huge role with how we connect with nature and how we show up to different spaces. So creating specific programs where people are represented and celebrated, that was the reasoning behind our affinity cruise. And it's definitely a learning experience for sure, because we're not perfect. There's a level of unlearning that we have to do to serve people the way they need to be served. So there's definitely been situations through our affinity programs that have been tough, but people feel celebrated at the end, and that's really what matters to us.
Can I ask you about some of those tough things that you guys have just experienced?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's even thinking about these things kind of breaks my heart because, you know, it's unfortunate that you have a group of visibly marginalized people that want to do great things for, you know, our parks and our public lands. And, you know, so let me just tell you the tea. So I hosted a Black and Latinx crew, um, and it was a young adult program. I got to work with people from Houston, but regionally from Texas as well. So it was a group of 10 people, and we were working in East Texas. And unfortunately, East Texas is not as welcoming as it could be. So our people were oftentimes like criminalized and stereotyped, and there was a lot of situations where folks didn't feel safe. So there were really tough conversations to have with our partners and community members and our participants. But we centered their experiences and made sure that, you know, weren't anywhere where they weren't comfortable with, and you know, we had to show up for them. And there was just situations where even like our partners were being contacted, and, you know, people in the community were saying that things have been missing from their front lawns. And like, we've had other programs in that location, but because they weren't visibly people of color, you know, there was no complaints there. So now you have a group of BIPOC people, and then now there's an issue. So it was definitely really tough. And, you know, I definitely have been rethinking like what it means to go out to these spaces and work in conservation projects when you're a person of color. So it's definitely influenced the way I want to approach my programs moving forward. But it was a good learning experience because, you know, we can facilitate a safe space for people in the program, but we don't have control over how communities act. But as an organization, we do have control with how we respond and the expectations that we set with our partners. And our partners are really supportive, and like, huge shout out to the National Park Service, because wow, like, amazing people work for the service. And, you know, they were open to having these conversations with us and our members. And at the end of the day, like, they left with a good experience despite how they were treated, unfortunately, in the community.
It's definitely how we show up for people, right? Like you said, something very poignant, that you can't really affect how everyone will treat each other, but how you respond and show up, center the voices that are being aggressed upon, right? It sounds like lots of microaggressions, and I think a lot of people don't understand what that looks like for a person of color. Mm-hmm. The automatic, you know, idea that you may be guilty of something or not trustworthy in some type of way. But what you can do is, like you said, center those voices, have those conversations, make sure they feel safe, make sure that you're having the conversations outwardly. Because I think that it's one thing to say, we hear you, we're sorry you're experiencing this, let's kind of deflect and go somewhere else. Yeah. And it's another thing to say, no, we're going to address this. We're going to have conversations about this, right? We're going to move the needle however much we can, because that's the right thing to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One thing too that I want to mention about that experience, which was really tough to hear, which even motivated me even further to like address it, is that a couple of our members, you know, had their own experiences being Black members, and you know, they were basically threatened by a community member, and they told me, I was lucky enough to actually be there, so when they came back from the store, they told me, and I was like, that's not okay. And they're like, Miss V, this happens all the time. This is normal. And like, those words, I was like, no, we're not about to normalize this in this. Yeah. Not at all. Like, let's talk about this, and now let's talk about this as a group, because you have a different lived experience than the people that are lighter than you. So let's talk about that. Like, let's have these conversations. Let's create a support system where we feel safe here. You know, that ended up leading to us having a buddy system. Us, like, even though the store was like a 5-minute walk, we're driving. We're driving. So it's things like this that the crew came up with to support each other. And me as a leader, just facilitating those conversations and making sure that people feel heard and safe. So I just wanted to mention that as well, because it just does highlight how normalized a lot of these unfortunate issues are. And we as people in programs have a lot of authority with how we show up for our people.
Absolutely. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of people that have been desensitized, right?
Exactly.
It's like you're almost numb to it. The experience of going outside and thinking, or getting pulled over and immediately thinking like, okay, these things could happen. Like, so many people don't know what that experience is even like, right? So it seems almost unbelievable, right? Because it really should be unbelievable, but it's not for so many people.
Yeah, I mean, and just to add on to that, I think it should be unbelievable. And just the fear that a lot of young Black people, young people of color, when they go into all white spaces, the fears that they automatically inherently have, is something that we have to acknowledge and be aware of. That's why I guess we're starting the Affinity crew here. And thankfully, I always got to shout out the UPS Foundation. Because they're the reason why we're here in Atlanta, and they were very persistent about starting an Affinity crew here. They wanted that to be the first thing in Atlanta, doing an all African American Affinity crew here in Atlanta, which I was like, on board, down. And but it made me even more hypersensitive and more aware. Like, I want to make sure that this is the best experience and safest experience for these young people, because some of them it's their first time, and for others, they've been there. But also, we're coming into these spaces, being introduced to this world, this green space, that when they go into these spaces that might be all white, that they come out alive and that they come out feeling empowered and not feeling deplenished and not wanting to do it again. And so that is something that is very real in creating that. And I'm so glad that SCA is a part of that and get very open. And also our partners have been so great with those conversations. Really, really thankful about that, because I don't know how it would be if I didn't have an organization that didn't support that. So,
yeah. And I mean, I think it's probably, not without saying that I'm sure there's communities that really welcome these groups. I mean, I would hope, right, that there's some communities that you don't have those same types of experiences with. But we all know the reality of where we are today and that there's work to do. So we just appreciate you guys doing the work. So let's get into kind of this month's campaigns for the Student Conservation Association. 6 Degrees is like super excited to be partnering with you on this. Save Our Sphere is a great campaign about, how we can do everyday activities safely at home, virtually, right? Because right now we're in this COVID environment, but we can still actively participate in Earth Day. Like in years past, 6 Degrees has partnered with SCA, and we've done like park cleanups in Anacostia, which is, right outside of Washington, D.C., and these types of things. And obviously lots of people gather and they go out and they meet. And so obviously, you can't do that this year. So I would love for you guys to share about this campaign, #SaveOurSphere, and how people can get involved and what that looks like.
Yeah, I can go ahead and share. We believe that anyone can become a conservationist, and small acts contribute to the overall movement. So we're really asking people starting next week to post their small acts and just #SaveOurSphere, just to influence people on the social media platform. Everyone can become a conservationist. You don't have to look a certain way or go out into a park or be a park ranger. Like, there's things that you can do at home that you've already probably been doing at home that are environmentally friendly, that contribute to the resiliency of our planet.
Oh no, you said
you have nothing. I looked at Jonathan.
That was great.
Done. So one of the activities I actually had never heard of, which is like creating a seed ball. I know. Shame. But I would love
No,
for you guys
I
to
promise
share.
that gasp was a gasp of excitement.
Okay, well then good. Can you talk about this seed ball, this elusive seed ball?
Yes.
Like what is this activity?
Okay, so I get really excited because
You're totally geeking out, and I
I
really love
am.
it.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is live. This out. But one of the reasons I get really excited is because outside of our conservation crews, boots on the ground people doing awesome work in their communities and in green spaces, we'll also run an environmental literacy program in Houston area ISD schools. So I work with elementary kids. And they're fantastic. They're just so great. And one of their favorite activities to do is making seed balls. So we basically grab like clay, some soil, and some native wildflower or grass seeds, and then we just mix it all together. And then the purpose is like once you throw the seed ball anywhere in any open green space, once it rains, it'll decompose and it'll grow. So it's like super beautiful. The kids love it. Even the adults love it too, like me. But it's great. And like, you know, it's just important that you get seeds that are native to your region. We want to promote, like, it's a way to promote habitat for bees and little critters and whatnot. So we do that all the time here in Houston because we are trying to reclaim our coastal prairie. So we have like kids sometimes making a bunch of seed balls and then throwing them in like different prairie areas, and then they grow.
That sounds so fun. Like probably the idea of like throwing it, and I mean it's like the those little kits that you get as a kid, and it's like watching a caterpillar like turn into a butterfly. It's like that same idea, right? Of like or the chia pets. I mean, that's like the closest thing I was thinking of.
Chia.
Sorry. Exactly. And I want to thank Alexandra. She made a comment, and I think there's a link there. So if you're looking at this on Facebook, or you can go to SCA.org, and there's some information about these pollinator habitats. So to your point, it's really critical that we're using native plants. So yeah, that's fantastic. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Once COVID is like managed, we gotta like set something up to get people from 6 Degrees making some seed balls.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking next week, like that's a great activity to do if you have like family or friends in your neighborhood, right? Just to like make some local seed balls and put them out in the green spaces around you. Something totally safe and socially distant that you can do.
Exactly. And one of like the highlights of my Urban Trios program is last year so the kids made all these bunch of seed balls, and we took them out to their campus and they just like threw them everywhere, and like they did grow. So it's like it's also like a little legacy project that kids can go back to. I did that. I helped contribute to do that, which is why like it's so special.
It is great. There is, I know, it's really emotional, right? I know. That's really sweet. Thank you. You were the perfect person to answer that question about people. Perfect answer. So how is the best way for people to connect with SCA if they want to learn more, they want to join Save Our Sphere next week? I would love for you to do a little plug on how they can get connected with your organizations, and specifically the affinity groups if that's an interest as well.
I would say go to our website, and then you can definitely go to our different community pages. I know we each have one, especially for Atlanta, because we definitely need a lot of support because we're new to this space, and we would love a lot of people to be connected with us. The more the merrier, just to get the word out, because we want it to be a great experience for young people. We want to get more people involved, especially BIPOC youth, and outdoors and in green spaces, because they've been on the computer all school year and they need to be outdoors, smelling the fresh air. And I know they need a break too. So yeah, go on our website, go on our community pages. You can go to the Atlanta page, Houston page, all of our community pages, and be aware. And I think they also have a page that's designated to Save Our Sphere, and ways that you can get a part of that, and make sure you're using the hashtag Save Our Sphere.
That's fantastic. And I'd like to say that obviously we love you guys. We love your work. And I'm so excited that we got to spend time just getting to know you guys on a deeper level today. But 6 Degrees is running a fundraiser for the Save Our Sphere. So if you're listening and watching and you're so moved and you want to support this organization financially so that they can further their mission, please head to SixDegrees.org/Save Our Sphere. There's information there. You can donate directly to the work that's being done at SCA. All right, guys, we appreciate you spending more time than we usually do for our little impact lounge, but I know we could talk about this forever, and I really hope that this isn't the last time you guys join us. I would love to check back in, hear more how these programs are growing. So there's always an open invite if you guys want to jump back in.
I accept.
Yeah.
We really appreciate the space. Thank you so much.
Yes, great space, great conversation.
Of course. Well, you guys made it. You're doing the work, right? And part of the Impact Lounge is highlighting the true foot soldiers that are out there, right? Doing the work and making an impact. And the two of you are definitely doing just that in the work at SCA. SCA is lucky to have you, and I'm sure they know that. So thank you for your continued work. Best of luck in these programs and Earth Day. I hope it is a great success for the organization, and we're looking forward to partnering. We have some fun things planned for that week.
Awesome.
All right, guys, you take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a blessed day.
All right, bye, everyone.